Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock or a couple minutes after, so at this time we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Are there any disclosures of interest this morning from anyone?
I'd just like to comment on item 4 under the consent agenda. My wife was involved in the real estate transaction for that property, and that's when it was discovered that the road is not where the property was bought for the road. That property is closed. I don't think there's a conflict, but I just wanted to disclose that she was part of that transfer of that property.
Okay, thank you. Any other disclosures of interest? We will go to approval of the previous board minutes.
Move approval, Anderson.
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Same sign. We will review the agenda.
There are no changes, Chair.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Consent agenda has 9 items on it. We've all had a chance to look at them. What are your wishes?
Move approval as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Reports from our departments and officials, finance and taxpayer services. Mr. Dowling.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just have one item this morning. This is related to the hiring of the property tax and elections manager. So as you know, the county board approved the hiring of this position during the May 21st board meeting. This position was posted internally, and the staff received one qualified candidate, which was Ms. Mickey O'Keefe. Staff conducted an interview on June 12th, and the committee agreed to offer the position to Ms. O'Keefe. She has accepted the position with a promotion date of June 24th, 2024. So Ms. O'Keefe has been serving Goodhue County Finance and Taxpayer Services for over 18 years. She's been responsible for property tax calculation, has steadily taken on additional elections responsibilities during that time. Recent examples of successful projects she's completed include selling tax forfeited land online with public surplus, implementation of the Gerard's tax payment system, transitioning multiple county offices from Avenue Cash Register to IFS Cash Drawer, and the conversion of the tax calculation system from Avenue Tax to Tyler Tax. She's been a certified county election administrator with the offices of the Secretary of State and certified in Minnesota property tax calculation with the Department of Revenue since 2016. Based on Ms. O'Keefe's experience and current salary, I'm recommending for consideration the approval of hiring Ms. O'Keefe for the property tax and elections manager position at a salary grade of 113, step 10 of $50.98 per hour, or $106,038.40 annually.
Are there any questions?
Move approval, Anderson.
Second, Flanders.
And a second. Any other discussion?
Just a comment. I've worked with Mickey for years, back when I was on townships and with elections, and an exceptional employee that does exceptional work. Very good that we can move her up the ladder.
Anyone else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Human Resources, Mr. Dow.
We're here to talk about the limited English proficiency policy. Thank you. So today, I'm here to talk about the Limited English Proficiency Plan policy. And so this policy, so Goodhue County, and we are recipients of federal financial assistance. So Goodhue County is responsible for providing core services to effectively promote the safety, health, and well-being of our residents. To be in compliance with the comprehensive civil rights plan that this board had approved, we worked on the policy compliance subcommittee of the equity review team, worked on the LEP plan. So what this is, it's been developed to serve our clients and our customers and members of the public who do not speak English or who speak limited English, and that means unable to speak, read, write, or understand the English language at a level that allows them to interact with our staff effectively. So part of this is we have a federal obligation when receiving those financial assistance to make sure that people with limited English proficiency shall not be excluded from programs or any of the services that we provide, or termination of public services because of any language barriers. So this plan goes into details about making sure that we are in compliance with the civil rights plan that we had approved previously, kind of one of our next steps. With this plan, on the memo you'll see the federal obligations and the title that we are working with, and that is on there, but then it also goes into interpreter services and also translation of documentation. Part of this as well, you'll see on many of like the MnDOT sites and also the USDOT and other sites, it has something that says once you have reached a certain once you've reached a certain population number, so that goes by percentage and also numbers, which I have here, and that information is there, we have legal obligations of what we are required to do. So example being, once we have reached a certain number of the market, eligible population in the market and among other current beneficiaries, we have a legal obligation for translating of vital documents. And it kind of puts all of it in order, and I can make sure that that is also sent out. So with that being said, Goodhue County, we have reached the threshold for Spanish. That is the one language that we have currently met that threshold, and so this plan puts in, if we put this in policy, it helps us meet the compliance of making sure that we are doing what is stated, since we have reached that threshold for Spanish-speaking population in our communities. With this plan, we also realize that each department is vastly different in the services that we provide. So on the second page of the plan, you'll see that there is A through F of different obligations that the department heads have to make sure that there is a base requirement, but then also realizing that certain departments such as HHS and the Sheriff's Office may have more interactions with the public people of the public who have limited English proficiency, and so knowing that they might need to have more trainings, more resources, and or other things than maybe other departments that we have that have less interactions with limited English proficiency members of the public. So with that being stated, we wanted to make sure to work with the departments in writing and looking at the baseline obligations for each department. And so part of the first ask that we have for the departments once this is passed would be to designate a LEP liaison person. If that is not designated, then it would be the department head, to make sure that we can all come together to create an implementation plan. And the hope is to create an implementation plan and have that plan in place by the end of 2024, so then we can start working towards the different aspects of the plan, which is listed in A through F on that second page.
Scott and I sat on this committee, and what we really were trying to do is make sure that anybody who walked through the door could find a way to service whatever language they spoke. And with Spanish, there were extra obligations. And the whole idea of having somebody designated as the liaison was so that Jessica or whoever could work with them to kind of figure out what was needed in their department. And what's needed in HHS and what's needed in IT are probably quite different. But one of the ideas that came up yesterday that I thought was really excellent was just on the back of here having just a few languages so the person could point. So if you were the a person just walking by, you could at least point them in the right direction. And so I think it's basically trying to find a way to serve people who don't speak English and not make it too burdensome for the departments or figure that there's a one-size-that-fits-all.
Correct. Thank you for that.
Other questions, Linda?
Well, I know I already brought this up, but on the list, it says identifying your patient's language, but we can't really say patient's language, correct? So are we going to change that?
That was a mistake, I think, because we had talked about that language early on, and I don't remember what word we came up with, but it wasn't citizen and it wasn't resident, it was
Correct. And you're speaking specifically about the I Speak cards. In the policy itself, I mean, that is something that our communications specialist has worked on, and
We'll get it corrected.
that will be corrected. Specifically in the policy ourselves, we made sure to not state, even we were very specific about the words such as client, customer, and we went with members of the public. So when you look through the policy, there was a lot of thought put into making sure that a lot of it is addressed as members of the public. Because each department, we work with our public different ways. So we do have some who are customers, we have clients, we have patients, we do have other ones. So in the actual policy, it is referred to as members of the public, just for clarification wise. And
Yes.
so,
Briggs?
yep.
But would this chart be published somewhere?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, what you're seeing there is not something that I created. This is an image that was taken from the training materials that South Country Health Alliance had given us. And since they're more medical, I believe that's where the term patient
Right.
came from. I just cropped it and placed it on directly. We can certainly change that, and we can just erase or just crop off that part. My only issue, or the thought that I brought up to Scott on that email thread that you and I, all three of us, had kind of had, was that we've already distributed these images already. They're already out, they're laminated, and so probably by the time that I would be able to re-laminate it and also re-edit it, probably take a good 2 hours. And so I didn't know if that was worth the effort and time in order to change just that one term on that paper.
All right, well, I guess that's opinions from the board. I mean, I'll throw mine out, which I think patient represents something, and I guess I don't necessarily know if all the people coming to the county would want to be considered a patient. So I probably would have an issue with it, but leave it to the rest of the board.
We can get them changed at some point, but that's exactly how that word came out. They're more than likely, if they need to identify which language they're speaking, they probably don't know what the word patient means, but that's a different topic, but we can get it changed.
Yeah, I guess I would like to see it changed too.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
Just a comment, if we change that, is there a way we can change the order of the languages and put the ones that are the most common at the top? I mean, that's just another comment. It's just a thought. You know, they're in alphabetical order. What if we did it by the order percentage of people we have, so that Spanish was the very top one?
I don't know.
I think we could do that at some point, but as Briggs said, this is a snapshot
I understand
from
that.
a sample form, so that would
Right.
involve significantly more work. But I'm sure we'll get there.
The other thing is, I'm guessing that there's a little bit of science behind it, that if you're, let's say, Vietnamese, it's customary that you'd look at the bottom of the form,
Oh, that could be too. Yeah.
so, because that's where the V's are, so.
Well, it's not V in their language, though. It's Q.
No, but I think my guess, and I think there's probably science behind
could be.
how they put these in order, but that it's custom that you know that in the country you're in, V is towards the bottom of the alphabet, so you customarily look there. Don't know that, but I'm guessing.
Any other questions?
I would move the LEP policy forward as presented.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Mr. O'Keefe. Good morning.
Related to the settlement agreement.
The materials that you have explain the history of that litigation and where it's currently at right now. As the board is aware, this has been going on for some time now and originated with a case entitled Tyler versus Hennepin County, in which the plaintiff in that case challenged the state's tax forfeiture process, which before the new legislation took place, allowed the state to keep any surplus monies over the tax debt that was initiated the forfeiture. The United States Supreme Court held that that process, where the state kept any surplus monies, as to be unconstitutional taking, and sent it back to the state of Minnesota to fix it. Since that time, another lawsuit popped up, which is the Sport Leader litigation, in which 20 counties in the state of Minnesota were actually named individually. Goodhue County was one of those counties. However, the plaintiff in that case is seeking to name all 87 counties as a class defendant, and that's what the settlement agreement involves, all 87 counties. So a quick summary, the basic premise of the settlement ties to the statutory changes that were made to our forfeiture process that was adopted by the state of Minnesota here this past summer in this legislative session. So there were two tracks going on since the litigation took place. One was the settlement negotiations with regard to the litigation. The other one was the statutory scheme that had to be fixed in the legislature. And we're at a point right now where both seem to be resolved. And the legislative changes that were made fully funded the settlement agreement that is being presented to the board today. And that's the biggest takeaway, I think, for Goodhue County and all 87 counties in the state of Minnesota, is that the state legislature has decided to fund the settlement here, which is approximately $109 million. Some counties have much more exposure than Goodhue County does, but everyone has some exposure. The settlement agreement calls for, basically sets up a scheme by which the class plaintiffs, there's a notice process that goes out notifying potential claimants of what the settlement is and that of their right to file a claim to recoup some of that surplus money that they didn't get when their property was forfeited. The look-back period is 7 years from the date of the filing of this litigation, so we're looking at June of 2016 as the look-back period. So anybody from June of 2016 forward who had their property tax forfeited in Goodhue County is a potential claimant in this settlement agreement. But the settlement does require them to file a claim. So there will be published notice of the settlement agreement and the process by which a party would make a claim, and they will have to go through that process. And the settlement agreement goes through all the details about how that process works and how claims will be paid. But again, the big thing for Goodhue County is that any payment for those claims is coming from the state of Minnesota and not out of Goodhue County. So that's ultimately what's happening here. It does, again, set the look-back period to 7 years. Anybody who doesn't file a claim within the claim period, which is approximately 9 months from the date that they send out the notices, is going to be barred from filing any future lawsuits against Goodhue County based on this particular claim, and it should fully resolve the issue going forward. That's the advantage of a class action for our purposes, is that it does bar any future claims going forward after that 90-day claim period lapses. I have attached, as part of the board memorandum, I have attached a proposed resolution. This is going to the judge for approval at the end of the month, and there might be some slight tweaks to the language of the settlement agreement. That's one of the reasons why I'm asking for your permission to sign off on that settlement agreement. But it also includes authority for our finance director to provide the information that the settlement requires in order to create that list of affected properties, and so they can effectively send out the notices to the right people. But it does, the resolution does ask the board for approval of this settlement agreement. It does ask for approval again for the finance director to provide the information, and then it does also ask for permission for the county attorney to execute the settlement agreement in the final form that comes down. And again, the idea is that that will be filed with the district court at the end of the month, and the district court judge will have to approve the final settlement agreement, which everybody anticipates will happen because it is a joint recommendation from both the plaintiff and the defendant counsel. And moving forward, that will resolve the litigation piece of it. And obviously there's a structure around filing claims, but unfortunately for Lucas and his team, the statutory changes will have to also be implemented as well. And in speaking with Lucas this morning, it's my understanding that the Department of Revenue has not provided full guidance on that yet. But there is, I think the good news is, I believe that the majority of the statutory scheme for tax forfeitures remain the same. The big issue obviously was with what happens with the surplus and the sale, and that is the part that will change. There are some requirements under the state statute that requires the counties to try to sell, make a good faith effort to sell any surplus properties that we have right now waiting to be sold, and that money will help fund the settlement agreement. But going forward, there is a process by which the county will be required to make a public sale of the property, surplus monies going back to the property owner. And if for some reason it doesn't sell within a certain time frame, then there are other options for the county to sell the property and possibly put it to other use. So that's it's a detailed settlement, detailed legislation, but for the board's purposes today, just simply asking you to adopt the settlement agreement that's been proposed.
Questions from the board? Susan?
I have two questions. One, is there any reason you can see why the county shouldn't pass this resolution and be part of this settlement?
Not that I can think of. If the county opts out of the settlement, then the state funding would go away for the county. And that's obviously the biggest piece of the financial piece for the counties. Okay. And the state statute, the changes that were made there have an opt-out function. So all 87 counties are included in that funding from the legislature to support the settlement of the litigation, and the counties can opt out of that, and that's the same with the settlement agreement here as well. The counties can opt out, but if we do that, we are, of course, one of the named counties individually. We would be on our own to litigate that and also be responsible for any financial outcome that comes from that. And we know from the United States Supreme Court that the scheme that we have now is not constitutional, so there will be liability associated with that for the Goodhue County. So I can't think of any reason.
Okay, and my second question is more of a curiosity. I think the documentation you sent us in a few places referenced that many of the folks who lost their property were poor, elderly, mentally ill, I can't remember what else, okay? But the same issues that kept them from being on top of things with their property tax will probably keep them on top and keep them from being on top of things as far as being aware of this and what to do. And are we, and I would guess you don't know the answer to this, but are we doing anything to assist people who might be eligible to see that they get what the state is saying is their due?
I don't have an answer for that. I'm assuming that there are processes, and there's like a special master that's assigned to this process with regard to the litigation, and they'll be sending out multiple notices. I think their plan is to put billboards up in the Twin Cities areas, and I think a lot of those issues are probably up in the Twin Cities area. So they're planning on putting billboards up, ads in newspapers, send out individual notices to folks. How advanced that goes, how deep
I understand.
that goes, I don't know.
And do you have any idea how many properties might be involved in Goodhue County?
I would ask Lucas if he knows that answer.
Not off the top of my head. We did put together a list of all the properties during the outset of this, when it was first discovered that our law was unconstitutional, Hennepin County requested all the counties in Minnesota to provide a listing of all the information. So we put together an inventory at that time. We will need to update that to make sure we provide that information once again. Number of parcels, I don't know offhand. I know dollar-wise, if we don't accept the settlement, it would be material. Aside from that, people and companies lose their properties for a variety of reasons. What you mentioned is certainly one of them. There are companies that go bankrupt and just walk away from them. There's an environmental remediation. There's a lot of different reasons. So one of the struggles certainly would be trying to reach out to that initial person, and if that initial person is actually still alive. Their
heirs are eligible, it looked like, if.
Yeah.
Brad?
I would move approval of the resolution, and then I have comments after, if it receives a
No
second.
motion. Do we have a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. Comments?
The comments are, this applies to all property that was tax forfeited from 2015 forward?
I think
2016?
the date is 2016.
2016
7 years
forward?
prior to the
That's as
filing.
far back as they went.
7 years.
Okay,
It's
so-
related to the statute of limitations.
So then, under this, the special inventory sale stuff, I understand that. We've talked about this at AMC board meetings for 2 years plus. So I understand all that part about selling it and getting it, 75% of the proceeds go to the state and, you know, that, all the agreements around that. Do we have properties that we've held from back then that now have to go through the sales process? Do we know those numbers?
My understanding is we haven't just held anything back. We've tried to sell everything with the exception of if there was a public purpose for a parcel. Those ones have been held separately. As far as our current inventory, we don't actually have that much at this time. We have 12 parcels that have not been to auction yet, 3 of those which are in the process of being acquired by the DNR. And then we have 4 parcels that went to auction but never sold. Those are publicly listed on our website for sale. So in the grand scheme of things, we don't actually have that many parcels that we
And then
need to sell.
So my second question is then, the statute takes effect, whether it was immediately when they pass it or July 1st, August 1st, whatever. So the properties we've had ahead of that all fall under this special sales inventory, right? And then the properties following that, when the statute takes effect, have to be dealt with according to the current new statute. Is that correct? That's how I've understood it. I just want to know if that's how you're seeing it.
There is different treatment based on the timing of when they actually went forfeit, so that's an additional complication that we have to make sure that we're tracking. So, for example, we had 2 parcels that went forfeit this year. We've got a handful of them from last year as well, and then we have ones, as I said, going pretty far back that just had never sold. So we need to make sure that we are tracking those by the specific time period when they went forfeit to make sure we're treating them appropriately.
So at some point, maybe just some information to the commissioners so we know those different categories. And then at some point, when DOR gives us some definition on going forward that makes sense, that we get kind of understand the sales process into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is obviously this is a very big change. We've had multiple meetings with the Department of Revenue. This is on the radar. They know they need to do it. However, this is a large task, and frankly, they don't know when they're going to get to it.
Only applies to the ones where we sell it for more than the tax amount on it is. And if there's costs to clean up and some of that, to understand how all that fits in as we make decisions whether we clean up a property or whether we do not, we just need to understand
Yep,
exactly
absolutely.
how that's going to play out going forward. Thank you.
Anything else? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And I think really what this does is it takes the risk off Goodhue County and puts it onto the state of Minnesota. And there's absolutely no reason not to go that route and limit our risk. Being we followed a state statute and it got us in trouble.
But there's probably also no reason for the people in Goodhue County who are eligible for some of these funds that we should encourage them to get them. Yeah.
Right.
Somebody's going to get the funds, and if they're eligible, they might as well get them.
Right, thank you. And thank you for condensing that. I thought you were going to read all 84 pages.
Yeah, I'll try to save you from that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have for your information, how about our cannabis moratorium update?
So this is just for your information that we have, a group of staff has been meeting since the legislature this year amended the cannabis statutes to start a fast-tracked process for social equity applicants to begin growing cannabis by the end of this year. The county needs to get ordinances together and everything like that, so a group of staff has been meeting, and there was consensus at the previous board meeting to have staff draft a moratorium for Goodhue County on cannabis businesses and establishments to go into effect. This moratorium would only affect areas that are under our county zoning ordinance, so it would not be in effect inside any city limits. But yeah, essentially I provided just a brief update of that, and the public hearing for this moratorium will be at your July 3rd meeting. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer as best that I can at this moment.
Are there any cities that are currently have a moratorium or are implementing a moratorium or want to follow the, if we do it, follow with us?
There are cities in Goodhue County that have instituted moratoriums. I'm 99% sure Cannon Falls has one. There are cities that elected to not have moratoriums. I believe Red Wing was one of those. They brought it for a vote a couple of times and it failed. The idea with the ones that don't have moratoriums is, I believe, that the state has to issue you your license for a cannabis business. So if the state isn't giving licenses yet, nobody can open one. Well, now the state is fast tracking some licensing. So we as the county are moving forward on this. I've heard from just a couple other counties that have done moratoriums or are thinking about doing one now after this new legislation came out. Haven't heard from any cities that they would be changing that now.
So July 1st is when they can apply.
July 1st is when you can go online and see if you are an eligible social equity applicant. And then towards the end of August is when you can apply, or maybe it's the end of July. And then at the end of August, they'll hold their lottery system where they'll choose of all of those applicants. These few people get licenses to start growing.
That's for the growing side.
Mm-hmm.
For the sale side,
That is still not getting licensed. That would still be in 2025. The growing is they want people to start growing so there's product available for the retail sales in 2025.
okay, so the retail can't apply in July 1.
Right.
Okay.
Right, any other questions? Thank you for putting. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Linda.
So at the public hearing at the July 3rd meeting, is that one available to be online for people to call in since we're at Cannon
If we
Falls?
weren't at a remote location, it would be, but we are at a remote location, so we specifically left that out.
Because they
It's not
can't.
reliable.
Okay.
But, yeah, the public notice did have all of my contact information on it, email, letter, you can send me a
Yes.
letter and everything, so.
And I did see
Typically,
that, to
that's-
have people, yes, write in or call in.
Write in, call in, email, drop something off if you can't make it or something. I'm happy to, bring those comments to you on July 3rd.
Thank you.
So if 20 people applied July 1 for growing, they're in the hopper, they're not covered by the moratorium.
Well, so nobody can apply July 1. Like I said, July 1 is when you can start determining if you are a social equity person who qualifies to apply. The state will
Okay.
open the applications at the end of
Okay.
July.
All right, so we are still ahead of the beginning of
Yes.
application, okay. And will the grow happen, can it happen within cities also?
Yes.
Okay. Right, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. We have a project status report. We have a broadband update.
I just have a couple of comments at the, Nick from Southeast Tech, no, I'm thinking of the school, Southeast Communications. At any rate, he came to the Welch Township meeting and he wanted to expand out from where he had just completed a project. So he was wondering whether or not the county had a way forward to use the monies. So I talked to John a little bit. We don't apparently have the agreement on moving forward with the grant process yet. We didn't, for 24, we didn't agree on that yet. Is that right, John? So I guess that's my question to the board, is that there is like over $200,000 left, 264, that we could use. And we are going to be having a broadband summit coming up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Linda, you're correct. We had a broadband grant program that we released. We had 2 rounds, and those were both approved by the board. When it was agreed that the remainder of the ARPA funds, the $264,000 you mentioned, we did not have a specific plan for how we would make those funds available to providers. So at this time, the funds are there. I believe that the goal was to allow those funds in conjunction with a state grant application. Many times those applications get a higher grade, they get more points if there is a local match, and so those funds would then be available to providers to include in their application. But as far as I know, we don't have a process right now to simply offer funds to providers, and that would be something for the board to decide. For example, the project that Southeast Minnesota Wi-Fi brought forward, again, that would be up to the board to decide whether to approve that or not.
I guess my curiosity was just if we were, what we did want to do as far as somebody bringing something forward, and if we want to make the decision to wait until whatever the date is so we can offer some help with a grant application. Not,
I take it this is Nick Jablonski?
yeah.
Is his project got state funding attached to it too? Is he
No.
getting a state grant?
Not at the moment that I've heard about. I haven't sat down and talked to him. And he was requesting 50% from the county, which is more than we've got and more than I would suggest that we consider. But it was just the idea that he didn't know how to move forward, and because we didn't have a plan. So that's my question to the board.
So my understanding of why we did it the way we did it was we were taking our dollars, ARPA dollars, and multiplying them by using them as match for state dollars. So if we're not doing that, then we lose that multiplier. That's why I would be more in favor of those dollars going out with match dollars as helping it match with state dollars to multiply the size of a project or the ability of a project. That's just my comment. That's how, I know that's why we did that way back when.
Right, I guess I just didn't know if that is now still the process that we were going through.
Is that
What
the
he said
decision
is
that
we
we
haven't
make?
decided what to do right now at this point. That's what we've used it as. If we're going to continue that, we need to make a decision about that. Did I understand you right, John?
Again, it would be up to the board how they want to allocate that $264,000.
Yeah,
We've done it as pure grants ourselves. We started with 1.6 million, I believe it was, and we released that as available for grants. We have also done direct requests for projects that have come to the board, and we have offered it as you said, matching funds and grant. There's one project right now that received in the last round of border-to-border grant funding. They received their grant and $277,000 from the county. And after that leaves the $264,000. I don't know when the next border-to-border grant window will open. They've already closed the challenge process for the current round. There are no projects in Goodhue County in that round, so it could be December before they open up the state's grant. And just to complicate matters, you all heard of the BEAD program, I can't remember what it's, Broadband Equity and Access something. It's part of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. That is still in process, and I do not expect any money to be available from that until 2025 at the earliest.
I agree with Brad that we want to try to leverage that money, but I think we have to have some kind of understanding of how much county money it takes for a project for it to increase the odds that they'll get the state money. So what I think would like to do is leverage it for as many people as we can, as opposed to use all $263,000 on one project and then tell the next group, sorry, we don't have any money set aside. So I don't know if that's $25,000 or if it's $100,000, I don't know. But I think we need some information on how we can most effectively leverage the money we have set aside. And I don't know what that is.
When the next bonding bill comes out, will it have that in a definition, or won't they set a dollar amount for your local contributions?
They don't generally set a dollar amount or even a percentage. They just give you more points. The more local match you have, the more points you'll get in your application.
So I think in rural areas, if the township kicks in $5,000, that counts quite a bit.
Right.
So what I don't know is if the county kicks in $25,000 or $50,000, if that is enough to really improve their odds of getting it. And that's the question that I would have. Because we want it to be enough where it increases the odds, but we also want to try to help as many areas as we can.
Right. We're not at a decision today. Scott, go ahead.
So again, it was mentioned, but we plan to have a stakeholder meeting with our broadband participants later, and I think most of the dates were in July. John's already sent out a poll to find out when it works. And that's where we bring our providers in. We find out what potential projects they've identified. And then additionally, the BEAD process, the email I got back from the executive director is they're working on the local challenge process and finalizing volume 2 They're expecting the final plan will not start until, mid-fall, she says. What we've historically done with these funds is, a couple people have said, is tried to leverage them with either state or federal dollars. So one of the current proposals we've received is asking for more dollars than we even have. So the question would be whether we, if we gave him, half of what he's asking for,
Or
if that even does
$50,000
anything.
or
Which I do know that if he got state money and county money, then he probably would be enough. But just county money, unless the board did extra, that wouldn't be, it would not be enough. Now, I do think that if we are going to do this, it would be fair to notify our other providers that we are planning just to instead of having our other process, we're just going to bring them to the board, but let us know, because we do have other providers that have contacted us about projects that they're waiting for this exact process. And what we told them and what we told Mr. Jablonski is that we would try to coordinate our timing with this timing of the state's process, but we don't know what the state process is.
Right.
And
I don't think we
as
want
far
to.
as the question of next year's border to border, because what we're referring to here is BEAD, the acronym John tried to get all four letters of, but the border to border, we won't know that one until next spring again, so.
I think we want to help as many areas of the county as we can with the money we have.
We do. But in my opinion, the best way to do that would be to team it with either another state or
agree.
federal process.
And we don't want to
'Cause
sit on it too long.
No, but 200 grand doesn't really go that
No,
far.
I understand that. Only if it's leveraged. If 50,000 increases their odds of getting the grant,
Yeah.
then it goes quite a way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, well, thank you. New and old business. Anyone have new or old business? Committee reports. Susan?
So the LEC is an ongoing issue, and I'm hopeful we'll have a cow on that sometime in July, because there's nothing, we haven't had any meetings since our last board meeting. We received a letter from the city. It was written by the new chief of police, Nick Sather, and they were requesting some information from the county. They wanted to know what we would be charging for year 4. They also wanted to know if we'd be willing to work with their architect to look at different processes for the LEC. So that was part of it. Then they had a big city council meeting where a good part of the conversation about where they were going forward was talking about all the ways the county is screwing up. So it was sort of an unpleasant meeting to be at for that reason. But they're taking steps. They've applied for a grant for $7 million. I don't know if it's from the state or from the feds. When I say the grant has been accepted, I don't mean they've gotten it. I mean they provided the correct information for the grant to be considered. So the $7 million grant they're looking at. At the city council meeting last Monday, they chose a location for where they would put the new building. They looked at 3 different locations, one by the new fire department, one by Menards, and one on land they own, which is up kind of by the hospital, and they chose, it was like a 12 or a 16 acre site up at the hospital. They also approved a block design to be done on a combined police station public works building, because they thought they could just pull the police station part out if they didn't want to do both parts. So they're moving forward. They want information from us. And for me as a board member, I've always said I think we need to know the cost of having them in the building, which we know the kind of monthly costs. We need to know the costs of not having them in the building, and we need a reasonable way to come up with a number. And I think there's 2 ways we've looked at it so far. One is getting information from the AMC about how how different counties are charging city police forces for being in the building. If anybody wants information on that, I can give it. And then I think that Scott sought information from the assessor's office in 2022 about what was for rent in Red Wing at that time for commercial property. And then I went in and talked to Levon to see what was available and the cost for rent of commercial property in Red Wing now, okay? And none of that information considered what the building costs to begin with. It's just what rent is going for now. And then it also didn't look at what people are actually paying for rent. It only looked at what the things that were available. So I think if we don't have a cow soon and make a decision soon, the city's going to go on their way, and whatever it costs us for them not to be there is what it'll cost us for them not to be there. And it seems to me we have to have the cows, so at least we're making a decision rather than making a decision by not even having a discussion with the whole board.
Scott, your takes on it?
Yeah, Susan was at the meeting, and I've observed it online. I think my 2 cents on they're trying to get a placeholder if the current lease, which is 3 years, if they needed another year or two, what those numbers would be. And what I've suggested when people have asked me this question is we have a number of places in agreements with cities where we use an implicit price deflator. And in fact, the exact language is the annual average percentage change in the CPI for urban wage earners, for clerical workers, for the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Bloomington, Minnesota, Wisconsin area for the extension requested by the city of Red Wing is what you'd need. And this is the same inflation measurement that we've used for the LEC agreement and other agreements. So that would be my suggestion, is that if they're just looking for a year or two so that they can study their options to do that. If we're looking long-term, I guess I would remind people that the 2023 study that's referenced, that's never been completed. And I think that should be completed. And I think, it'd be the benefit to the city and the county to know what options there are with that facility. And additionally, one of the things identified within the 2023 study was that our architect was to find what a appropriate and fair number for paying a lease would be in today's day. So if we are going to look more than a year or two for an extension, I think that would be fair to both parties. And I think it'd be good information, because the numbers we've gotten, we don't know they're good numbers. They're numbers, but we don't know that they're the right numbers. So I think that'd be appropriate. And like I say, we've used this language in multiple other places, and we've never had anybody say it's not fair, honestly. So I think if you took where we were at the end of the current agreement, and if they want a number, this is it. I don't have a problem, and we've used that in other places with the city of Red Wing and other cities. So, and I don't know if Lucas has any comments on that also, but.
Yeah, just say it's a standard objective number. That CPI number gets put out by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, so it has nothing to do with us versus them. It's just that's the inflation rate that's measured. So it's used in a lot of different agreements.
I visited with Kim Bicey, I don't know, it was last Thursday or Friday, and he said a couple of things. One, he had no issue at all with an inflation number being put on whatever. So I don't think that's a concern. I think that the concern was, and I talked about, well, if we use the last number that we had, which I think was 26.9 per square foot, and used an inflation number from there, would that be acceptable? And obviously he can't speak for the city council any more than I can for the county board, but it was his impression that that would be acceptable. And he was looking at wanting to figure out if there was a long-term way where it was fair to the county and fair for the city to be in the same building, okay? So I don't think he was looking just for a placeholder. I think he was looking, is there a way for this to happen? New paragraph.
That'll come down to the site study and the, what does it take to finish that?
Well, that's exactly right. I think the difference between a short-term agreement, I don't think anybody's got a problem with inflation. In fact, you guys have heard me tell them in an agreement that I was pretty sure I could talk the board into inflation, and I'm pretty sure
they don't have any issue.
But if we're talking longer term, that's where we need to talk about finishing that study. Now, the one challenge there is that there's a 2023 study that's unfinished with the city of Red Wing and Goodhue County. The city also has a 2024 study that they're moving forward with, which is fine, but that doesn't go back to our current facility and look at what are the possibilities there. Because in 2023, our architect distinctly said there is enough room in this building, and there's also possibilities for adding on to this facility. But we've never been able to get back to the table and flush that out. And I think if the board is interested in this inflationary language we have, I have no problem reaching back out to the city and say, hey, if you're looking for a number for the next 2 years, it would be this. And by the way, we would also like to finish the 2023 study and look at the options of this building. And I think, as public servants, it's incumbent on us to look at all options.
I think so.
If we don't finish that, how can we tell them if this will work permanently? We don't know, or long-term.
I think it would be better for both if we finished it.
Yeah, I think it got complicated for a lot of reasons, but one is the chief of police retired, and there's a new chief of police, and what the old chief was saying they needed and what the new chief is saying they need are different. So the original study was based on what the old chief of police was saying. I guess any of you can watch the city council meeting. I think the chief is pushing hard for a new building. I think that the city council members are reluctant because of the huge cost that is there, and they'd like to figure out an option that would work. The chief, for whatever reason, isn't considering the lower level of Garden View, but considering at the basement level, and would like to know if there's options other than being in the basement that would be workable. Okay? And I think there probably are. And I believe, now again, they were looking at 3 different possible block designs. One was the city, the police department and the public works. One was just the police department. And one was, now Nick is convinced we'd need to add on to this building. I don't know that we need to add on to the building. But they didn't want to approve a block design for a building that they weren't even sure they were going to have access to. So they did not approve that. But I think that they would approve half of whatever it cost to do a bigger study. I think we need to sit down again. I believe, I haven't heard from one citizen that believes it's a good idea for the city to build a brand new building. Right? And I don't know, Linda, if you have or if you haven't, but the people are kind of wound up about this.
Well, just my comment is, first, we don't need to get into politics of Red Wing City Council.
No.
Our job is to manage the county budget and be respectful of 47,000 people that live in Goodhue County and the dollars they invested into the LEC. And if we're renting it out, there needs to be some value that gets applied to the building that gets added to the cost of having Red Wing there.
Mm-hmm.
That's just reasonable.
Sure.
And that's all farther I need to go. Whatever Red Wing wants to do, Red Wing's going to do. I'm not going to make a decision that is short-sighted for the rest of Goodhue County just for Red Wing.
No, of course
I won't
not.
do that. So if they need a number, I think we could come up with a number really quickly and put the escalator on it and then go out 3 years with it, and then that gives them time to figure out what they want to do.
Well, I think we have a number.
I think we already have that, yeah.
We just hadn't,
That's what we'd propose, wouldn't we?
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I've told them in meetings that I thought it would be. And I have no problem putting this language. I'll work with Lucas, put an email back to him. But I will tell them that this is what we look at short-term, and that if you're looking long-term, we feel it's prudent that we finish the study from 2023.
Yep, I would ask you to send that letter. Go ahead, Linda.
So, I still have the question as to whether or not are we going to have any kind of a committee of the whole meeting so that we can, as a group, we can hear all the different pieces of this. Right now, we just get literally bits and pieces. It's been presented, the city council is already talking about it, so they are talking about it in a public meeting, whereas the county is not, because we don't necessarily know enough so I don't know anywhere near as much as Susan does, because she's in the meeting and I'm not, so I guess.
Have they talked about the dollar amount that we've talked about, that you guys have, that Scott's talking about?
These lease amounts, they have that, yeah, they approved it all.
Well, they do. I don't know why they were asking for the 3rd year when they already had it, okay? And then they were asking for the 4th year, which they did not have, okay? So that's where we were talking about putting an inflationary number on the 3rd number. you know, parts of it that were what we want is for everybody to have decent information to make good decisions. That's what we really want, and hopefully the city will have decent information as well.
So do we need to just approve a number with a percentage and send it over?
I think we can,
I mean, that's,
I think so. I
I
mean,
think so, okay.
You don't actually need to do that, because what happens, and this is no different than when we had the lease extension discussions before, is we have a committee that works with underneath whatever parameters they think the board has, and we bring that back in a formal agreement, just as the city council brings it. So, as I said in the meeting last time we met with the city, is I believe it would be inflationary, and we have previous language. Now I'm here talking to you, I haven't heard anybody say, no, inflationary is crazy, don't use that. So I think we're fine on that. Todd's basically said to send it. So I don't think you need to approve anything. What we do is, I can send this back to it, and it's just like anything, it's always subject to county board and city council approval.
sure, of course.
So that's fine. As far as doing a committee of the whole, yes, that's always been the plan, and I don't want to make an excuse, but we basically had a lot of the study done in November, but then we had a few other scenarios that we wanted to study with the city. The city basically asked if they could take some time to go and investigate this other site down by 58 and 61, the Anades building, and they did, and that came back. Have a few different options between 16 and 24 million. From there, they went and started talking with another group about other sites, which is fine. It's all part of what the information they need. But we never came back to finish that 2023 study. And when we finish that 2023 study, that's what we're planning to get back here, but we're kind of still waiting for the city. But what we can do is, if in the meantime, we can bring back the study results that did come back to the committee in 2023, as well as the other options that were laid out that weren't looked at, and bring that information, or we can email that information out as well. But nothing, the key to all this is none of it's finalized. We need to finish that study.
And then we've changed police chiefs, and there's different philosophies there, and they've actually requested that we go with a different architect.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's just a lot of.
Yeah.
They've been working
And just
with-
in all fairness to our architects, so the original statement from the chief of police, the previous chief of police, was that they didn't have any needs in the next 20 years. So if you're an architect working with that information, that means that, okay, whatever the footprint they have now is good. Yeah, they don't need anything more. Okay, we told them we did have needs. So he incorporated that into there. He still came back and said, there's enough room in this building. And so now we understand that the city's had a little more time to think about it. There's some new leadership, and they do have needs. So it's a matter of getting those needs from either their architect or both architects working together. But somehow, to me, to be fair and prudent, it would be just to finish that study.
Do you think there needs to be another meeting with Todd and I and the 3 city council members?
I'm guessing after I send this email, we'll have a meeting. So, but again, I want to, if we're going to start down the road of looking at a study, I want everybody to be genuine that we're at least interested, and I don't want to just do a study so that the city can say that, we just want to go build somewhere.
No, of course not.
So I don't think you need to approve anything. I think I've heard enough, and like I said, before we even had this discussion, I was pretty sure you guys didn't disagree with inflation, so.
All right, thank you. We'll go on to the claims. Anybody want to pay the bills?
Approval.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Motion made and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Awesome. We'll take 3 minutes.